we are live again. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, How to Navigate Pain. Last week I did How to Navigate Back Pain, so be sure to check that out. This week I am doing How to Navigate Knee Pain. Okay, so the first thing I want to tell you is that if you are currently dealing with pain, and that would be anywhere in the body, shoulders, elbow, knee, hip, lower back, whatever is happening, I do encourage you to reach out, get a full assessment, whether that's with me or another practitioner, but we don't want to just spot treat whatever might be going on in the body. That will never lead to actually fixing the cause of the problem. I will be releasing soon my 3-day assessment called Fix It Formula. It will be $79, and this is a deep dive into a joint-by-joint movement screen, strength testing, making sure that we figure out what is the underlying problem that might be landing in your knee. All right, on to the knee. How do we navigate knee pain? So I'm gonna have to just scoot over a little bit there. There we go. Okay, so first thing we wanna do is wanna make sure that we assess. I just talked about that. My Fix It formula takes you through a full joint-by-joint movement screen, but usually people think that the knee might just be a knee problem, when in all of my years of doing this, unless you have actually sustained a knee injury, and that means somebody slide tackled you, or you planted and pivoted and tore your ACL, or you fell off the back of a truck, whatever happens, unless you actually sustained a knee injury, the problem is more than likely not your knee specifically. The structures of the knee are very, very sound and strong, and it is very difficult to actually go in there and cause damage with what we typically see knee pain developing from, and that's usually things that we are doing in the gym. So if you have developed knee pain because you've started doing CrossFit, or if you have started running, or you did boot camp, I would encourage you to start thinking of it as less of a knee problem and more of a systemic problem. Maybe it's a hip, maybe it's your knee, maybe it's technique, maybe it's leg strength and balance. Okay, so think of outside the box when it comes to the knee specifically. All right, so what do we assess? We definitely want to start assessing the hips, range of motion, strength, stability. What does one side look like compared to the other? We want to make sure that we take the hip through all of the ranges of motions: external rotation, internal rotation, flexion, extension, circumduction, whatever the hip can do. We want to make sure that it is even on both sides. There will be some disparity, but close to even on both sides, and that none of those ranges are painful or limited. Okay? Same with the ankle. We want to see what is happening not just above the knee joint, but below the knee joint. I get a lot of people that come to me with knee pain, and sometimes it happens after a long hike, or I don't know, I ran 3 miles and then I couldn't walk the next day. That to me indicates that there is some shock absorption problems happening with your foot strike, and that the ankle is not taking the load that it probably should be. You could also be dealing with some instability in the hips, but we also want to address what is happening at the ankle. Do you have full dorsiflexion, plantar flexion? Do you have control? Are you strong in eversion? When you do strike, are you going and pushing through your big toe? There's a lot that needs to happen at the ankle in order to relieve pressure at the knee. Okay, so sometimes we see people squatting and you get this collapsed position of the ankle. Everybody addresses the hip, but what if it is actually a problem at the ankle? What if you are actually collapsing in, allowing your arches to fall at the bottom of the squat? Then the problem is not so much the hip. We are going to address that as well, but we do want to start encouraging that ankle to stabilize and the floor and the foot to grip the floor. Okay, so we want to make sure that if the problem is landing in your knee and you're having symptoms in the knee, it is not just a knee problem. We're looking above and we're looking below. Okay, so we're assessing the hips, the ankles, and I talked a little bit about the toes, right? Your big toe is incredibly critical to the system all the way up the chain, right? So you could have shoulder pain and it stems from your big toe, right? That's how the body works. But specifically the knee, if you have a history of your big toe being limited in range of motion, or if you just don't have full control there, or if you're not using your toes, then that could transfer up to the knee. So we want to make sure that we start doing some things barefoot, that we start making a point to encourage some mobility and some strength and some range of motion in that big toe. All right, Strength balance, left to right. Are we generally equal, right? Because if you're, say you go out for a 3-mile run and you have a very dominant leg that is very capable of stabilizing you, or maybe you go on a hike in Tahoe or whatever, that dominant leg is going to take a lot of load. So you might actually see that your dominant side, that knee starts to become a problem because it just starts getting pissed off. It's like, look, I'm carrying all the load here. I'm going to start barking at you so that you start paying attention. Okay, so we do want to address any strength balance issues that might be happening. Okay, another thing to look at, what does your overall training volume look like? I talked about this a little bit last week with regards to the lower back, but with the knees as well, what does your overall training volume look like? How much are you running? How much are you squatting? How much are you jumping? How many double unders are you doing? How many box jumps? Because if that is too high and you're not allowing your body a chance to heal in between these bouts of effort, it will start producing symptoms, generally pain. Has anything changed in the last few months? And I'm not talking about the last couple of weeks. What has changed in the last few months? Have you changed the training cycle that you're doing? Have you changed your training volume? Has your job title changed to where you might be sitting more, walking more? Have you got new shoes? What has happened? Look outside the box to see what might be causing your symptoms. Training volume, new shoes. My shoes got discontinued, so I'm in the process of finding new shoes. In that process, I'm going to expect some difference in how I feel after my workouts, right? So if I purchase new shoes and my feet are being supported in a different way, that might have some repercussions. It might lead to some symptoms, maybe not pain, but maybe some general discomfort, okay? So think about everything that could be contributing to your symptoms. Again, training volume, any injuries that you may have had, not just at the knee, but maybe elsewhere. Maybe for 2 years you were dealing with a hip injury and now you've been addressing it. Maybe you start developing some knee pain because of the transition that you're doing to the hip. Maybe you've changed your technique. Maybe you've changed the way you train. Maybe it's starting to land in the hip, okay? We do see a lot of times when we address one part of the body, we get movement in where that area of pain is. So maybe it goes from your hip to your knee, okay? So that's another thing to look at. And the last thing you want to do is look at your technique, okay? This is all assessment. What does your technique look like? In your squats, are you rising up on your toes? Are you a little unstable at the bottom of the snatch? Do your box jumps collapse in? What is happening that could be contributing to that symptom of pain in the knee? A lot of times, especially my CrossFitters or people that go to boot camp, or if you're just starting to work out, it doesn't become a problem until you just put so much volume on it. So it might not be a problem for the first 6 months, 8 months, a year, 2 years. Maybe it's not a problem until you start squatting into the 5x5s, 5x3s, right? So we want to look at technique and make sure that our technique is solid as we build in training volume and in load, okay? All right, if you have any questions, please make sure that you put that into the comment box. I got my handy dandy wife behind the camera and she will let me know if anything's coming up, okay? So what do we do if we show up to the gym and we know that we're dealing with a bout of pain in our knee, or it's been a problem for a little while, or maybe you just wake up and you're like, I don't know what I did yesterday, but my knee is pissed off at me. So how can we modify in the moment? One of the best things that you can do when you're experiencing knee pain is to certainly not just sit this one out, right? We don't want the knee to get locked up. We don't want any of our structures, unless there is something broken, we want to use the joint, okay? So we want to make sure that we can still continue training and still using that leg, but in a way that is not going to cause irritation. So the best thing that we can do is you're gonna want to put on a knee sleeve. I'm going to deter you from doing that. I consider knee sleeves to be very similar to a lifting belt, and in the way that people are starting to use them nowadays. I see all the time on Facebook groups or just people that I know through the CrossFit scene. My knee is starting to bug me. Does anybody have any recommendations for knee sleeves? I would encourage you to, if you use the knee sleeves, use them with the intention of weaning yourself off of them. Okay? Unless you have a legit history of knee injury where you've had surgery or there's something going on, and even then I encourage you to really try to strengthen around it. If you are developing pain due to your training, throwing on a knee sleeve and pushing through just because then it hugs the knee and makes it feel a little bit better is not going to fix the problem. Okay, it's going to put a Band-Aid on it, you're going to get through that training session, and your knee will just get worse and worse. So I encourage you to try to not use the knee sleeves, or to use them temporarily while you are getting in there and fixing the problem with the intention of weaning yourself off. Okay? So what we do when we get into the gym, the very first thing that we can do is just try to maintain a more vertical shin. So if you think of any lower extremity exercise that you're doing, whether it's a squat, right, a step up, a lunge, a Cossack squat, right, generally we want the knee to travel forward. We want to keep our heel down, but we do want the knee to travel forward, and we're going to get a forward shin angle. When we are having problems at the knee and we want to decrease that symptom of pain, what we want to do is maintain a more vertical shin angle, okay? Can we shift our weight back through our heel in order to keep it a little bit more upright? That will take a little bit of that grind and that pressure off of the knee, okay? So if we're thinking about back squats, you might want to swap out a box squat. That's fine right there. Okay, so you'll be coming up, and then instead of just squatting straight down, we're going to try to reach the hips back and maintain a more vertical shin, okay? We're supported by the box. We can increase or decrease the range of motion according to what we can tolerate, but being able to reach those hips back and maintain that vertical shin is going to put a little bit more pressure in your butt and hamstrings, take some off the quads, and alleviate some of that pain in the knee. Same with step-ups. If you're thinking about a step-up, instead of allowing yourself to just come straight up this way, think of pulling that knee back, loading the butt and hamstrings. You can have a little bit more of a forward torso, right? We're not talking about the back like I did last week. Last week, I wanted an upright torso. This week, because we're dealing with knee pain, we want a vertical shin. So what we're going to do is we're going to lean forward, pull our hips back, drive through the heel a little bit more. We're still using the big toe. And then pull ourselves up by using that butt and hamstring a little bit more. Okay, you see that I lean and drive. That's just relieving some pressure from the knee. Okay, same with lunges. We can make sure that when we're doing those lunges, we keep that knee pulled back. Okay, so you see the angle there. Cossack squats, I like to tell people to just stagger the feet a little bit so that when you go down into that Cossack squat, you can maintain more of a vertical shin, right? Instead of just going straight down this way, we are going to sit back into it and maintain a more vertical shin, okay? That's one of the easiest ways to make sure that we feel good in the gym. Another thing that you can do is use some banded resistance to really make sure that you are locking in that knee positioning. If you're doing squats, put the band around I like the band below the knees because, like, again, it makes you lock in those ankles better. Put the band down here. Make sure that your knees are driving out, that they're not buckling in. That will help you, just give you a little biofeedback to make sure that maybe it's just positioning. Maybe it's just being aware, okay? So maybe that is just the cue that you need in order to get through your training program with less pain, okay? So banded resistance is huge on that. Modifications. Okay, we also want to make sure that as we modify, we eliminate any true cause of irritation. So if you find that running, jumping, sometimes sled pushes, because there's a lot of motion at the ankles, sled pushes, split jerks, there's a lot of motion at the ankles, so sometimes that will develop knee pain. We want to make sure that we do not do too much of that while we are going in and addressing the knee pain, okay? So think about when you hurt after your bouts of training. When does it hurt? And it could be a couple days later, okay? Maybe you're not thinking about that split jerk really causing problem, but 2 days after you're like, I don't even know why I'm hurting. I haven't done anything, but if you think back a couple more days, maybe you did do something to irritate not just the hip, but maybe the ankle and therefore the knee, okay? So think back a little bit more. All right, so how do we start addressing the knee pain and fixing it? First thing we want to do is get moving, right? I talked about this a little bit before. We want to make sure that we are not just sitting there. We want to get moving. One of the best things I like to tell people to do first thing in the morning is to start moving the ankle around and start bending the knee. So before you even get out of bed, you can just sit up and you can start rolling the ankle around. Okay, so you can do 20 in one direction, 20 in the other direction. You can write the alphabet. Again, the healthier and more mobile your ankle is, the healthier your knee is going to be. Okay, so start using that ankle. Another thing that you can do in order to start addressing the knee itself is to just lay down on your stomach and start bending and straightening your knees. Okay, this is very, very mild. You're not going to be under any pressure at that point. So your knee should glide pretty smoothly through that range, okay? We want to make sure that when we're addressing the knee as well, and I didn't talk about this in the beginning with assessment, but we want to make sure that we can actually move the tibia, right? So another thing that you want to start addressing when it comes to mobilization is can you stabilize your knee, so you just stabilize your knee, and can you move the lower leg independent of the knee? Can you do that pain-free? There's a fair amount of tibial rotation that has to happen in order for the knee to stay happy, okay? So you can Google this, I have some stuff on my YouTube about it, but we want to make sure that when we're addressing the knee, we're not just looking at the ankle, the hip, but also the tibia. Make sure that this range is there, is smooth, is coordinated, and is pain-free. What else do we have? Okay, again, prone hamstring curls, and the other thing that you can do first thing in the morning is just get that hip moving, okay? The happier your hip, the happier the knee, okay? If something is restricted after you've gone through your assessment, make sure you get in there and unbind it, right? If you have a limited range of motion, you want to make sure that you work through that range, okay? Stabilize. Okay, so what do we do in order to give some stability to the knee, okay? We want to train the body to know where the knee needs to be in any given exercise, right? So when you are squatting, where does the knee need to be? If you have a tendency to collapse in, you see that there's going to be a fair amount of pressure placed on the knee. So what we want to do is start teaching our body exactly where it needs to be in order to stay safe. That will require some isometrics, some pauses in your squats, some banded movements, right? Give yourself the cues that it needs in order to start learning. Give yourself the tempo that it needs to start learning. Slow down your squats, slow down your wads. If you have 100 walking lunges in your workout, maybe don't do that one for time, but do it for quality, right? Slow it down and start giving your body a chance to start learning. If you go too quick, you run the risk of getting into a range of motion or getting into a movement that the body will not tolerate very well. If you slow down, you can stop yourself from getting there, okay? So make sure you take your time. Stabilize. We want to start building tolerance to landing as well, right? And so I see this a lot. People will do a lot of box jumps, or they'll do a lot of running, or even just jumping off the pull-up bar, and there's just a really big collapse of the body. A lot of that comes from here. We want to make sure that we are in control of our bodies. So start working on your landing mechanics, okay? Can you just land and not allow yourself to buckle under the pressure? Can you do some skater drills? Can you do some depth drops? Can you just drop off the pull-up bar and work on softening that landing, okay? Don't just assume that your body knows how to do these things. Go in there, record yourself, see where you can find places, spots where you can improve your technique and improve your skill, okay? What else? Move slowly through the range of motion. When it comes to stabilize, we can also start thinking about this with the strength work as well. Isometrics and shortening that range of motion is going to be hugely, hugely beneficial to the knee. So say you do have pain going through squats, right? If you put that bar up on your shoulders and you just come here, right? Let's just hold this position, right? Let's do a 10-second squat there, right? And load it up. Put some weight on there, right? Make yourself challenged. But go through that smaller range of motion. Maybe your 5x5 back squat now looks like a very short range of motion, but you're really thinking about what needs to be tight there. Maybe the next week, you're able to go a little bit deeper, and we hold that for 5-10 seconds, right? And then maybe the next week, we're like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper, right? But we start building strength and building tolerance through these ranges that have historically been problematic, right? But if you try to just load it on too soon and just go for it, then that irritation is never going to go down, and that pain, that symptom will never go away. If you start introducing that load and start building tolerance slowly through that range of motion, your knee will start getting stronger, your confidence will get better, and your tolerance for that exercise will increase. Okay? So when we're dealing with stability, think about isometrics, think about pauses, really, really slow down the movement. All right, when it comes to strengthening, we want to make sure that we address the ankle, the hip, the knee. We want to make sure that we take it all in, right? So when we are strengthening the ankle, we want to do straight leg calf raises, okay? We also want to do bent leg calf raises, right? There's two muscles down there. We want to make sure that we strengthen them how they need to. So make sure that you do calf raises. Make sure that you do that tibial rotation. We want to make sure that we have strength, we have coordination, we have mobility with the tibial rotation. And we want to make sure that our ankles are nice and strong. So there's a lot of banded ankle exercises that you can do in order to really strengthen this joint and relieve this joint, okay? The stronger your ankles are, the more tolerant of load that your ankles are, the more shock absorption that they can handle, the happier your knee will be. So do not forget about the ankle, all right? Start building tolerance to rebounding, right? If your double unders are causing problems, maybe you start building tolerance there, right? Don't just go doing 150 double unders, 500 double unders. What you want to do is, maybe you're doing 50 double unders for 2 weeks, right? How do you recover from that? Can you get strong? Can you stay tight? Does it feel okay? All right, maybe the next 2 weeks you're doing 100 double unders, okay? Can we build tolerance there? Okay, great, lovely. Okay, but slowly building tolerance in these ranges that have historically, or in these skills that have historically caused problems. Okay, isometrics through a smaller range of motion with the intent of progressing that range of motion and then increasing that load tolerance, right? Start light. Start at a weight that you can stay in full control of, right? Don't allow yourself to slip out of position. Don't allow yourself to get into a range of motion that causes pain. If you're constantly irritating that joint, it's not going to feel safe and it's not going to stop hurting, okay? Not for long term anyway, okay? So make sure that you take the time to decrease load, decrease intensity, decrease speed, decrease volume. Give your body and your mind a chance to come out of this cycle of pain and then reintroduce it slowly, okay? Over time. Because if you just think, oh, I rested it and I'm just gonna jump back in, it's feeling good, it will start getting angry again, okay? I think that's all I have for you. Oh, there's one more thing I wanted to say. When we think about the knee, think about your lower back, right? So if anybody has general lower back pain, usually they're like, oh, it's my lower back, it's my hip flexors. My lower back and my hip flexors. That's what always causes the problem. And in order to fix that, we usually strengthen the lower abs and the glutes, right? So your body is working in diagonals here, right? I'm just using this analogy because most people understand the low back a little bit more than the knee. The knee is very similar. Most people, and I'm lumping everybody in because this is just what I see 90% of the time, most people, their quads and their calves are very, very dominant. If there's a lot going on, they're gonna take over, right? What we need to see happen is stronger hamstrings and stronger tibialis anteriors, right? So we need this part and this part to be stronger, and this part and this part to chill the hell out, okay? So if you are experiencing some knee pain, start there. Let's do some hamstring lengthening, hamstring strengthening. Let's strengthening the tibialis anterior, which is generally ankle exercises, and let's lengthen the quad and the calf, right? You can do that with some eccentrics, or there's stuff on my YouTube for that. But think about your body in those diagonals. Usually that will start helping you understand what needs to happen in order to fix the problem, all right? So if you have any questions, please, please, please reach out. Send this to anybody that is having any knee pain. Next week, I will be going over the shoulder, okay? How to navigate shoulder pain. If you have anything specific that is bothering you, let me know so that I can address it. I will be sending, releasing the Fix It formula in the next couple of weeks. So if you want to sign up for the wait list, sign up there. It will be $79 for a 3-day full-on assessment. It will help you start understanding what is happening in your body. Okay? Thank you very much, and tune in next time. I will be live Monday at 2 o'clock p.m.